Okay, if everybody can take their seats, and I just welcome everybody. I have notes just in case I forget. So, but I am not from Arcade. I want to introduce myself first, and then I'll be introducing this panel. And I just want to start by saying that I am Laurie Gwen Shapiro, and I am not, a little bit about me, I'm not an artist, I'm not an art historian, but I am a journalist. And I sometimes write for the Times and the New Yorker, and most of my stories have been crazy true stories, and I love lost history. But I'm also an author, and I've written about a forgotten Antarctic stowaway in the Jazz Age, and I have a forthcoming book about Amelia Earhart in July and her marriage. And top secret, my next book after that will be about an artist. So that's one of the reasons I've been immersing myself in the art world. I'm the features journalism professor at NYU in the journalism school, and I teach storytelling and narrative nonfiction. And I think there's a lot of storytelling going on in this exhibit, which is something we're going to talk about. And I just want to start again by saying that we have something really special today. And yes, it's an art talk, but we are talking with artists who don't just respond to space, but transform it. And we're also having a talk about female mentorship. We're celebrating female mentorship. We don't see mentorship talked about or shown in exhibits as much as we should, with women in particular. And today we get to highlight the impact of one very special artist on multiple generations. I'm looking at you. Okay, so at the heart of today's conversation is Judy Pfaff, and the impact of her work as both an artist and a mentor. And I just want to have a show of hands. How many people here are artists? Okay, that's a good crowd. And how many people are just art curious? Okay, so like me. So that's where I'm coming from. Okay, Judy is a true pioneer in installation and sculpture, and she was born in England under extraordinary circumstances, and she was raised in the US, where she reunited with her mother for the first time after a very long separation, and I believe you never met your father. But Judy has pushed the boundaries of material and space in ways that continue to inspire. She is a MacArthur genius, and that's pretty great, a member of the American Academy of Arts and Letters, and her work lives in major museum collections worldwide and in many other collections as well, private collections. But besides that, you've shaped generations of artists, including the incredible voices joining us today. And each of these artists, who I'm about to introduce, have studied with Judy, but have forged their own distinct paths. And I will also say, just to make sure you know, that there's going to be audience questions at the end. So if you feel that I haven't covered something that you want to know, I'm absolutely going to call on people at the end. So Chere Krakovsky, who's right to my right.
Hello.
I'm going to read off of this just because I want to respect people's background. Is an interdisciplinary artist who studied in more traditional mediums at first. Would that be correct? But is now primarily focused on performance. And I'm going to paraphrase what I've read and heard. She has made herself the medium, and she's going to talk about that herself later. I don't know how this is possible. I was just telling her before, but she was in part of an Alan Capro happening in the late 1960s, which seems amazing to me. So she obviously has been immersed in avant-garde for quite some time. Her work has been seen at the Kitchen, Powerhouse Arena, and beyond. And her recent film collaboration, The Straight Curved Line, which you can see, won Best Experimental Film at the Bowery Film Festival. Oh, actually, I'm going in alphabetical order. So Sylvia, who's right over there, is originally from Melbourne, Australia, where I actually lived for a few years. She's a sculptor and painter whose work has been widely exhibited in New York, including at Leslie Heller Gallery and Odetta. And her material, and we're actually in a room with Sylvia's work, explores a deep sensitivity to form shaped by her background in painting and sculpture. Sylvia was my entry point, by the way, to this crew of astounding artists. We met when I sat next to her in Connecticut at an art opening, and I made a studio visit, and I just fell in love with her work. So that's how I connected. Suzan Shutan, who's right here, is a fearless installation artist and longtime arts educator as well, who grew up, as I was reading, within biking distance of the Yale Art Gallery. Her work is, she grew up in Connecticut and is back in New Haven, and her work has taken her across the globe from Poland to Argentina to Australia, and can be found in collections like the Aldrich Museum, the Sloan Kettering Hospital. Now, again, each of these artists has a distinct voice, but once again, they share a commitment to pushing boundaries, experimenting, and engaging with space in bold ways. So the show that we're in right now is called Beyond the Canvas, Touch, Trace, Tangle, which again suggests movement, physicality, and layers. And Judy, we're gonna begin with you. I was telling you what, I read
as a journalist, you do your research,
yes.
So I'm like terrified.
I read a very long piece. I think that I'm fascinated by this. You said in and not in one interview, but in several interviews, that you paint in space.
I don't think I've ever said that. I think
really?
That's been attributed to me.
Oh,
but
well,
I don't mind. Sounds okay.
Well, how would you decide, and how would you?
I just don't paint.
Right.
So yeah.
I mean, so it sounded also in my research that you always wanted to work in sculpture. Let's go back
to Yale in the painting department. There were 5 guys who argued with each other because they all knew each other and they all had positions. If you were the student showing your work in the pit, which is between the 3rd and 4th floor on the Yale, at that moment, the art building, they didn't care what you thought or what you did. So I decided not to make anything that could go downstairs. And I knew they wouldn't come upstairs. So I thought it was brilliant to just not participate. And I think if things were stuck in the wall, I was saved from that conversation that was not interesting to me. Now I think I was probably overreacting, but Al Held was my teacher, and he had been married to Yvonne Rainer. Mm-hmm. He'd been married 5 times, to Sylvia Stone. He was really fond of Eva Hesse. Mm-hmm. So what I was doing seemed okay. He didn't mind at all.
Would you call him your mentor?
Absolutely. It's funny, I just watched a video that a friend named Pier Luigi Consagra put together in an interview, and it was like he was right back. It was like done in 2005, I think. He was so rough. He swears a little bit like I swear, or I swear a little bit like he swears. And he took me very seriously and thought that I should get my shit together and, kind of respect my work and right. Value the ideas.
Did he see in you a visual? I mean, I'm sorry to tell you, I was reading that you weren't the greatest student originally.
I was a terrible student. No, I got kicked out of just about everything. Sorry?
Did he see a visual sensibility in you?
He saw someone, I've said this before. When we first met, he said, "So you're the new dumb blonde." I was then blonde. And I said, "So you're the janitor?" So that's how we always were.
Right.
Because he is so impressive that if you knew him, you were probably not just in awe, but intimidated. And I was too, but being a streetwise person, we could do that. And he enjoyed that a lot. And he also, when he was there teaching, this is in the 70s, love to see like movies at 2 o'clock in the morning. So on Chapel Street down, we just go to some weird place that was showing usually things like Shaft or, like just crazy. He loved shoot 'em ups and stuff. So
I want to follow up on that for a second, because I understand the importance of his work and having someone believe in you. My mentor was Frank McCourt, so that's why I'm a
lovely.
writer.
Yeah.
But I'm curious if you ever had female mentorship.
No.
And do you have any thoughts about that?
There weren't any. I got a job teaching the minute I got out of Yale because I was the only woman in my class. And no, I went to Brooklyn College and then to Tyler School of Art. They didn't have women, and all of a sudden everyone woke up and thought we should maybe try to hire a woman. So no, I never, well, that's not true. In Detroit, there was a wonderful teacher who got me into this place called Cass Tech, which was a wonderful kind of environment. And she did champion me, but we never spoke. She just thought that she saw something.
So I just found out 5 minutes ago that these ladies were roommates at one point when you were studying. Who wants to go first? Let's go to Susan.
This was also 50 years ago.
Yeah.
30 years ago.
Her oldest students.
50 years ago.
Where were you studying with Judy, and can you talk about the first time you walked into a classroom and what your impressions were?
Well, we were studying at Cal Arts, and Judy was there for, was it a year?
3 years.
3 years. Wow.
When is this?
This was in 1970.
I was there from 76 to 79.
Okay, so yes, and we were there from 77, 78.
Yeah.
And we were there 74?
Yeah,
74.
something. I am the worst with dates.
I know, me too.
But you get the idea.
But in
It's
that
the
time
70s.
period, yeah. And I think for myself, the thing that, first of all, I loved Judy's energy and I loved her positivity, and I felt that she was just incredibly supportive, because some of the guys there, and it was during a time of heavy conceptualism and minimalism, Paul Desari and all that. So, I was a person always very interested in materials. So Judy was interested in materials and was like, oh, thank God I'm saved. Like there's someone that will get me and will understand. So she was always very encouraging that way. But I remember going to see an exhibit of yours. I don't even know where it was, if it was at school or where, but it was all with tinfoil.
Yeah, I loved him.
And it was just like she made this whole incredible room installation with tinfoil. And I thought like, oh God, this is so great. It's like a everyday material that's so inexpensive. I don't have money. I can use anything really to make art. That was such a pivotal moment for me, because it made me realize that I really can make work out of materials that are out there already that are, inexpensive for me to be able to purchase or get. But at that time, actually, I wasn't working with that. I was working with fabric, making soft sculpture. I don't know if you remember that. And I didn't even know how to sew. I flunked home economics, totally failed it. But they gave me an industrial sewing machine, and in my own weird way in my brain, I could kind of figure out how to put things together without it being a pattern, but how to make it somewhat dimensional. But, from there I went off into just experimenting with other things. But I think it was Judy's installation that opened up the door for me. And then I saw another installation of hers where it was like painting all these different materials. And I stood in the middle saying, oh my God, I'm walking into a painting or walking into a work of art, and I'm becoming part of it. And so that took my brain to even a better, stronger level, and that opened up the door forever for me. And it to this day still.
And do you remember a specific, I was reading one of your assignments was to make a house.
See, I don't remember anything.
But that sounds like a good idea.
The idea of making something, was that something that you got from Judy?
I don't remember any of the assignments that
Wow.
anyone gave me. I just really, my brain, I just don't remember.
No, that's fine.
But I just remember these kinds of things and these moments.
No, we
you
remember
know?
what we do.
Yeah.
And
I think what was good about Judy is she didn't give assignments.
oh,
She just said, go and do it.
well, Sylvia, we're going to get to you in a moment because you
Well,
were.
the funny thing at Cal
Oh,
Arts,
sure.
at that time, everyone was naked.
Yes, yes.
And
that's
I had to
true.
figure out
wasn't
things
naked.
to have them put their clothes on.
Yeah.
So I could begin to teach. You know, they were
wow.
all in the swimming pool and it was, you know, so, and then sometimes it's like, I think we went to the beach a few times.
This is
Yeah.
this is
which
not in
made sense.
Columbia.
No, this is not a Columbia.
This is not Columbia.
And
I
we
missed
made,
out.
there's a sukkah, is that,
So good.
we,
For the
because
Jewish
was that
holiday.
woman's
Sukkah.
yeah, that was,
or-
I forget, so it's like, we made a huge structure with
Oh, I kind of
fruits and
remember
vegetables
that.
and
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
it was,
yeah.
but yes. I
so anything to get them to come. Feeding always worked, and you know,
Food has
Alcohol.
powerful quality.
think alcohol.
I want to ask Sherry, if when you were in California at this time, what sort of work did you go into to become? What sort of artist did you think you wanted to be?
Well, that's a great question. First, I want to say that no one really knew anything about Cal Arts at that time. So how we all ended up there was sort of magical. Like I remember I had an interview with somebody at Long Beach State, and then I had Cal Arts as a choice. This guy in Long Beach State was like 90. He was wearing a suit and a tie. And I thought, I can't go here. So process of elimination led me to Cal Arts. So I will say that I was kind of sheltered before that. So going to not only to college, but going to Cal Arts was sort of an extraordinary leap. So my mother was a painter, and she was very influenced by the abstract expressionists. So it was sort of like having that in the family history. So when I went to Cal Arts, I was going to be a painter. That's what I was going to be. So I spent so much of my time down in the basement, smoking, listening to Joni Mitchell, and painting. So that's pretty much what I did. In retrospect, I wasn't ready to sort of open up and embrace other things. But the quality of the faculty, Judy, Elizabeth Murray, all of a sudden, you went from being in your own little pocket somewhere, thinking about art and what you want to do, to being at Cal Arts and actually being surrounded by faculty that were making, meaningful, living their art, their life as artists. And that's the gift of Cal Arts, because when I came, I remember people just saying, you're an artist, go in and make work. So
Did you remember your first encounter with?
I didn't have Judy in a class per se.
I don't think they were, yeah.
But I remember the joy.
Well, you were so curious to me.
I remember the joy, the exuberance, and the difference, because I had I started out, you have to go into foundation. So those, as I recall, were mostly men.
Right.
So Judy's energy was.
And what were you teaching? I mean, you're not teaching.
Well,
you were teaching
it was a
everything.
conceptual school, so occasionally they would say things like, I think we have to bring in a painter or a sculptor, not that anyone will listen to them or be interested in them. So we were kind of this, we were this, ghettoized group of people who made
you were
things.
teaching multiple things, right? Painting as well.
I don't remember.
Well-
I think it was just like you were at large.
Yeah, it wasn't, Cal Arts was a really unique place in that I don't think they had art classes so much
They
say,
didn't, yeah.
but they had crits, and then they had other departments where you had dance, film, music. But for us, we didn't have really specific classes, like.
Matter of fact, they
classes.
didn't even give grades, it was pass or fail.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, it's like Quaker school.
Yeah.
I want to get to Sylvia because as many of you probably know, Judy is at Bard now. It has been for a long time, but that's not where you met her at another institution. Can you say when that was?
So I was just 25, I think. This is more than 30 years ago. And I went to Columbia to take a class, actually. I wasn't even a full-time student there. And I had just graduated from painting in Australia. I was beginning a new life in a completely new country, although I'd lived in California for a couple of years before that. And I was still in recovery from my degree in Australia in the painting department, and I wanted to meet some people, and all I knew was I want to take an art class, but not painting. That was pretty much my, boundary. And then I thought to myself, oh, there's a woman here. I didn't know anything about Judy. And I thought, okay, so this is called sculpture and it's run by a woman, so I'll take that. And what is there to lose? I'll meet some people. And and then the first day I saw Judy, I could not stop staring at her because I hadn't seen before a woman who was so themselves, and not, there was no pretense, and yet was a very serious artist. And in a short time, once I started making things, I felt like Judy took me seriously, and no one had ever done that before. And then the other thing is that I had a music background, and originally I had wanted to be a musician, even though I made art every day of my life growing up as a child. I was thinking I was going to be a musician, and when I saw Judy's installations in space, somehow, I don't know why, even to this day, I don't know if I can explain it, but somehow the music and art becomes one. There's something about, when you're playing a piece of music, there's rest, there's structure, there's the whole integrity of its form. And I saw Judy doing that physically in space, and it just made so much sense to me. And I think it's almost felt like it felt like I didn't have to give up music in a strange kind of way.
You actually have music incorporated into your pieces.
Yeah, so this is my work with the wool, and I really, this is a little bit unusual in that I've got these works like paintings on the wall that in a way are abiding by the rules of painting, and then I've got more of not an installation, but an environment that you can go in and feel held by. In another situation, I might have just had the whole thing, an area that you could go into and feel held. But because I had these paintings on the wall as well as this other work, I sort of tried to balance the two together, and eventually wanted the entire room to sort of be different sections of a composition. So, like a music and so, but when you move around with your body, which you can't do with all these chairs in the room, you relate to the work in different ways.
Now, that's going to lead me into my next question, which I'm going to ask to Susan. Sylvia, it's been a long time since you've seen Judy. Can we talk about the origin story of this particular show? Who would like to be the person that narrates that?
I can do that.
Okay.
So Susan has been a friend of mine for a few years, and I've always loved her work, and I didn't actually realize that she was a student of Judy's, but I just somehow got what she was doing, and sort of the playfulness and and they're using space and the painting but not painting. And so anyway, I've always admired her work, and we've started to get to know each other more in the last couple of years, I'd say. And then Susan said, oh, I'm having a birthday party in Portugal, would you like to come? And I said, yes, I would love to. And then she said, and Judy's going to be there, and Chere's going to be there. And I didn't know Chere at all at that point. And yeah, we had an incredible time.
How long was the trip?
About a week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were born on the same day.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
The exact same day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what was it like to reconnect to your mentor?
Wonderful.
Well, I didn't even know. Susan didn't say like, and the other people are.
All your
Yeah.
students.
Actually, it did occur to me that you
Yeah.
might be really upset when you heard I was going to be there.
No, I am not only thrilled here,
It was-
but I was thrilled there.
It was so great.
Sylvia's husband is, Susan's husband is Portuguese. So, and you put together a house where each of us had their own bathroom. Thank you, Lord. I mean, it's like, and you're in Portugal, you know, it was so cool. And I hadn't been there since the 60s.
Oh, God, I
Yeah,
didn't realize
60s.
It
that.
was.
Wow.
Did you talk art?
Yeah, yeah, we did.
Yeah, I mean, like, did you, or like, were you
We
doing
talked about our lives,
Yeah, we talked about
Yeah.
our lives. a lot.
our lives that have been inseparable from making things.
Are you aware of the impact that you've, I mean, I know that you're aware of your, you know, a lot of things, but are you aware of how you've impacted multiple generations of artists? Do you think about that at all?
I do. Not like that. I just am really happy that I wasn't destructive. You know, do no harm. So yeah, and I've had fantastic students. And if I think about them, I knew they were great. You know what I mean? It's like, it's not an accident. They come, you know, Sylvia is like a whirlwind. And I remember being like, oh my God, give her studio, you know, lock her in there. But also we were at Columbia when it was undone. It was like a new program. And we were on 125th Street in Prentice, where the Manhattan Project was. And every student had their own studio, which is as undergraduates, not, and that's my big thing, is like, give them space, say yes. You
And
know.
how did you get to Bard? Because it seems like you had a promotion. And what does that mean
Well,
to
I
you?
don't know. Leon Botstein, who's the president of BARD, called me up, and his wife is Barbara Haskell, so she knew of me. And he just said, you know, I need you here. And I said, no, thanks. I was a visiting artist there. It was like the worst. And he kept calling. And actually he called me on December, the day before Christmas, and said, make my Christmas. And it's like, Leon, you're Jewish. And I did get this idea that to co-do it. I mean, but also the thing with Leon, he said, because he sort of knew that I'm a little irascible and kind of go on my own way. And he said, this will be your school, your department. You can form it however you want. And I thought, well, there are 10 tenured professors there. I don't know if that's going to work. And he said, don't worry, as soon as I hire you, they will quit.
Did that happen?
Yes, it did. Yes, it did. So then I got to really bring in, and at that time, I didn't have to go through a search. I didn't have to involve anybody. And I brought in women, and, you know, and it is now, I think, and I'm not involved with it anymore, one of the great, undergraduate, and it's not an art school, it's a liberal arts college. So the facilities are a little different, but it's a fantastic school. And I think it began with just cleaning house and getting fresh stuff. And at first that I sheetrocked all the walls and made made it like and we had barbecues every Friday, rain or snow. It became a community and became, and I remember some of the men first said, like, why are you teaching like you think they're gonna be artists?
Oh,
Wow.
And I thought, yeah, okay.
That's
get 'em out of
why.
here.
wow.
I want to ask you a follow-up question, then I'm going to go back to Sherry. We were talking about whether she goes by both names, by the way. My question again with Judy, and you also teach, Susan, so maybe you can join in on this. What makes a student's work stand out? Is it fearlessness, curiosity, stubbornness?
Probably all of the above. To stay engaged. I mean, actually just intellectually stay engaged too, not just what is this idea about? What are you doing? Where do you want to go? Just lots of questions. And these arts are so full of energy and ideas and improvisation, and you don't have to do much teaching in that way. But like I said, I just think, just don't say no. Just if they come up with an idea, it's like, unless it's dangerous.
What about a work ethic?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I think I've always said, like, in order to get an A in this class, just come and do the work. It'll help. Just doing it, you get better. What is that, like 10,000 hours or
Right.
that thing? It has some validity.
Right.
And also a kind of a rhythm to it, like every day, either think about it or do something, a kind of, discipline in that way. Yeah.
Well, let's go to, I mean, you're next, so don't get worried.
No, I'm
You're
not.
at bat, not quite at bat yet. So, Susan, as a teacher, can you talk a little bit about your because you're also an arts educator as well as a working artist. What are some of the things that makes a student stand out, and what have you taken from Judy directly in your teaching?
Well, to feed their passion, to really feed their passion. And, I say to them, if you're not enjoying what you're doing, you're not going to do well. You have to really be, even if you're struggling, struggle is okay, but you have to be committed, and you have to be fed by it. So if it, you have to let it feed you. And you feed the work, it feeds you. So that was always about kind of that. And also about saying to students, just like, imagine where an idea could go and take it to that end place, and then go the path, go the path, but know that on that path, you're going to have all kinds of forks and roads, and don't be afraid to take it. Just don't be afraid to follow your heart. Don't be afraid to follow your intuition, which is really going to be a strong guide for you. So those were some.
Do you think of yourself as an artist first and an educator second?
Yes, I do. Education was a way to make money. My work is so weird and it's not so sellable. And so I always realized from the very beginning that I'm going to have a hard time selling my work, but I want to make it. It's my joy. It's my happy place. And it's a place that always challenges me, where, I can challenge myself and no one can take that away from me. So I just decided, I have to find a way to earn a living. But I mean, before being an educator, I worked in the museum field as a director of education for years. Matter of fact, Leon Golub was the one that said to me, what are you going to do when you graduate? And I said, oh, I don't know. And I said, I think I'm going to teach. And he said, well, these other women, they have like a partner and they're bringing in money, and it's just you, and no one's going to give you that. You're not going to be able to hop right in. You'll have to be an adjunct first. You won't be able to make it. He said, why don't you do what I did? And I said, well, what did you do? And he said, I was a director of education for museums in the museum field, which I had no idea. And so he told me how it worked, and he got me an interview at Des Moines Arts Center in Des Moines, Iowa. And so that I went out, I was really nervous. He said, just be honest. And he kind of walked me through things, and I got a job there, and I supported myself for quite a number of years working in the museum field. That's how I ended up coming back to Connecticut, besides helping my parents. So that was, and then from that area, I kind of got into working. I was invited to run a 1% for public art program municipally for the city of New Haven for 8 years until the money ran out. So I did that. And then after that, you know, the money ran out and it's like, what am I gonna do? So then I just started juggling teaching in a lot of different places and anyway, that's what
Well,
I've ended
it's
up.
so interesting to see that you also are teaching, and I don't know if the two of you have taught, I mean,
No, I
but,
haven't.
so, but you're teaching through, you know, but I'm curious.
Not that I wouldn't like to.
I want to talk a little bit about your work, because, you know, we can see a lot of the work when we walk through this incredible exhibition, and I'm going to talk about how you all think of how we should walk through it in a minute. But I want to ask about how, if you haven't seen Chere's work, she's the one who has the film work, and take a moment and sit down. It's also, you can watch them online, I believe.
Not yet, but if you want to watch them, I will send you an email with the links.
So go up to her. But I want to ask about how you, I mean, from what I've watched them, they're wonderful. They're very, in a way, autobiographical. Would you?
Yes,
This is pretty.
I would say so.
Yes, even though they're pushing the envelope. How did you become? How did you? Why don't you narrate your own journey to this kind of art?
Sure. So I did mention that my mother came out of abstract expressionism, so I was very much in the painter mode, and that made sense at that time. I was painting when I was at Cal Arts, and there was a lot of, I think, joy and spontaneity and color in those paintings, which I think also reflects Southern California, the light. Everything that I made sort of spilled out of my imagination, so it was in a way like I was having this funny conversation with myself. It was very physical work because it was larger. And so after Cal Arts, I came to New York to go to Columbia. And I was there for 1 year. This was way before Judy came. And it was very, I found it very, they were mostly men teaching, but the experience there at that time just felt, it was not engaging to me after Cal Arts, so I didn't stay. But what happened was that the paintings that I made in New York became very dark, very small. Everything sort of started to be, I don't know how to put it, compressed into this very tiny space. And I couldn't break out of it. So what happened was one day, I mentioned this to everybody, Elizabeth Murray was my teacher, and I had a dream, and Elizabeth's in the dream, and I say, Elizabeth, I just can't do this anymore. So I realized that I couldn't, I felt the urgency or the need to be in my body more, and to make works where the duration was much shorter. So I wasn't, you know, in my studio looking at work, stepping away, looking at the paintings. I needed to move. And so I kind of equate that with hearing music when you're at the bank and it's dance music, or at the grocery store and you want to dance and you look around and you're like, should I dance? And I'm like, yes. So that was
a great metaphor.
You know, I started making things. I picked up trash in my studio. I would just paper things I was going to throw out, and I would make things, and I would, you know, I would put paper in the tub and put paint on it. You know, because I am a painter, I have a painter's eye. I do love painting, but it is incorporated in the other work that I make now. And so as the duration got shorter, I'm like, you know what? I want to do performance work. Not only, but because I do have some photographs in there, but they are connected to the journey from making a painting. And I think I'm trying to say, for me, it was all up here, making the painting. It wasn't really, in my body. And doing that and moving through the pieces that were very immediate, then into performance, and then having a different awareness of my body and my relationship to making things, and just kind of like jumping in, because I didn't, although we have this contemporary history, all of us, and we've seen many, many different artists' work, I just sort of felt like in that moment, it was my gut driving me.
And it started really good work. I'm also a filmmaker and as well, and I just really enjoyed it. And also it took me to a place I didn't expect to go to, which is often the sign of what I like. I look forward to work. I'm going to ask one question of Sylvia, and then I'm going to start to open it up to the audience. Sylvia, how do we, like you, I think were one of the original driving forces for putting the show together. How do you think that people entering this work should go through this exhibit, experience it? Like, how do you see the rooms connecting in a way?
Okay. I mean, I feel it sort of viscerally, but I think that Suzan has a very definite connection with the history of painting in a way that's I kind of understand. Like, for example, when I was in my teens, I saw some works by Palermo, Blinky Palermo, and I remember the way color was used and how I would delight at the fact that it was an object, and then, oh no, it's not, it's a color. Oh, it's not a color, it's an object. And I really got excited about that. This is before I met Judy. And then with Suzan's work, I feel like she takes some of those concepts and some of that sensibility, the real strength of sculpture and the understanding of color, and how color has its own weight and feelings, emotions, and she sort of acknowledges that past and then takes it somewhere else, very surprising. And she also brings humor and lightness into her work, which I think is very rare, especially since a lot of the painters of the American abstract expressionists took themselves super seriously. She's got that intellect, but at the same time, she has a freedom and a wit. And so I thought it would be really beautiful if people see that first when they come in, sort of like an introduction to the journey. And then Chere has a piece back there too, which I love the fact that they're separated, like, so that you see her film and then you see another film that is connected but quite different. Chere's film sort of, I feel so connected to them. I almost feel like I've made them. It's very strange. But she has guts and a courage that I do not have. I hide behind material, while as Chere just says it how it is, and that is very liberating. So I like the two being together in that room. And then my work is sort of also another kind of struggle between painting and sculpture. I do love the American abstract expressionists, and I sort of feel that in Wool I've found a way to acknowledge the geometry in that work and but be playful in my own way. And then I like so it was a challenge trying to have an environment as well as have these more painterly works in the same room. So anyway, there's a bit of a pull and push there. One of the reasons I had that work go around the door was that I was trying to connect the hanging works with the more painterly works, you know, they're sort of, if you think of going from flat to very three-dimensional, that it seemed like making that into a wallpaper sort of brought the architecture more as part of the individual pieces. And I also, because I love Judy Pfaff so much as one would when somebody has changed your entire life, I did get a thrill out of the fact that I was creating an entrance way, saying, "Look what you're about to see," you know. Like, so, and I do love the lights coming out. Judy Pfaff has always played with light, and I think of color as playing with light. Like, I'll often choose a color based on whether it's, you know, what kind of light will it become in relation to another color. So that feeling of when is it an object, when is it just a light, and I do think we're talking together with those works.
And you know, I did see online video, Judy, that you're in, where you're working on an installation and you see it at Al Hill painting down the hall, and you peek through, and almost, if I recall, you're almost in conversation with that work. And what you just said really reminds me of that connection.
I also want to tell you that a few months before the show, I don't know when it was, I visited Sylvia's studio, which is over here.
Yeah.
All of this stuff and more in this space, and it's like, fuck, I think you've got to do a show.
Yeah.
Like, this is, I mean, I had never seen this amount. And so this is like her, like,
yeah,
debutante.
Judy
or something
said,
like this.
Judy said, I think you need a solo show quickly.
But
actually, you need several solo shows.
And I asked you, I said, so your studio is empty now? And you said, no. No, it's not.
But I will add, having made my own studio visit to Sylvia, that this is not old work.
No.
How old is this work?
So all the work made out of wool was done in 12 months. I had a very, very close friend who died a year ago, and I started working with the wool as a way of comforting myself. And then then I noticed that I was painting, but I didn't plan it. I didn't sit down and think, oh, I'm going to work in wool now. It just sort of happened.
So this is not your always material.
Right. So
which is something that you have in common with your mentor.
I mean, Judy taught me by not in words, but just by her work, that it is very exciting when you mix materials together, because you come up with an entirely different language, and you almost create a new material that's never been seen before.
That's so wonderful. I'm keeping my promise to open it up to the audience, because I really want people to feel this connection to this panel. Does anyone have a first question? Anyone? Right here?
Well, I don't have a question, but I wanted to mention that when I met Sylvia,
I'll repeat it, sorry.
I don't have a question, but I wanted to mention that when I met Sylvia, the first thing that I saw was white sculpture, and they were looked like ducks to me. And knowing her, the way she had grown into color, for me, is almost a surprise.
Can I repeat
Can
that?
I answer that?
Oh, yeah, let me repeat it so people didn't hear it. She was saying that when she first saw Sylvia's work, she saw mostly white, and there was pieces that were
They're plaster. They were
plaster
plaster.
that looked like ducks. Is that what you? Yeah. And that to walk into an exhibition with color was quite surprising to her. So Sylvia, do you want to answer
Oh,
that?
just that. So I used to paint every day as a child, and I am obsessed with color. And when I came to the States, you know, when you go through a big change in life and you don't have all the securities and whatever, I basically fell apart. And when I started to use color, the color had so much power, and I didn't feel, what I felt inside didn't match that power. And so I thought, how can I use color honestly? Anything I do is going to feel very superstitious, very superficial. So I actually didn't use color for 15, 20 years, hardly. Like I thought I've just got to understand space and texture and materials and form. And the allowing myself to go back to color is actually extremely symbolic, because it means, okay, my life is my life now. I'm really living, I'm really feeling this. I'm not living anybody else's life anymore. So it is a kind of coming out for me.
Is there another question? Because I have more questions, but I want to see if anyone, does anyone have a question they want or comment? Back over there. And if you could speak loudly, if it's.
Hi. What's interesting to me is how each of you deal with energy and gravity and anti-gravity differently. And I wondered if you could each talk about that.
So the question was that she felt that everybody on this panel deals with energy and gravity and anti-gravity in different ways, and how do you respond to that? Do you want to respond to that first?
Sure.
Or
No, I can.
oh, wonderful.
So I think gravity and anti-gravity. I think that in the film in the back, I'm not sure if this answers the question, but there's something about what happens visually and with the sound that changes the space for me, and how someone might interact with it, or how I interact with it, because the sound becomes an element, and the body, you know, there's a push and pull between being in the film and being out of the film. And the photographs, which are photographs of my hair and beads, have different perspectives, sort of up and down and sideways. It's primarily my hair, but it's also beads. So you know, and that's a sort of twist on body stuff. So that's what I would say.
And Susan, how do you respond to the question of
I
gravity?
forgot
So the question again was about the sense of gravity and anti-gravity, and do you see that in your work? I see that in your work. So how would you?
Yeah, the work is always about floating. For some reason, I was just always fascinated by Byzantine paintings when I was a kid at Yale. You know, just all these saints and people were suspended in space, and there was no sense of ground. Like, I didn't know where they were coming from. They were floating. And that idea of things being floating, this ethereal sense, has always stayed with me. And I just love the idea that you could be between spaces, you know, between, you know, up and down, a ground and like a sky. And so I think that's always kind of permeated my work. And so, and also this sense of movement, this sense of perpetual movement, you know, I want things to constantly feel like it's flowing. So that antimatter matter, you know, is kind of that. And then this sense of kind of, you know, that something's continuing, it's continuous, like the tar paper comes from something, it goes somewhere, you don't know where it came from, you don't know where it's going to, but it's just going to keep seeping.
I want to ask you about the tar paper, because Susan's work is right back there where you see the colorful, and then the sculpture, that sort of painted sculpture on the wall is made out of, where do you get that material from?
So the tar paper began because I really wanted to make a comment about all the oil spills that started to happen with, you know, in Alaska. It began with Alaska, and then it was in the Gulf. And the bottom line is that I felt so helpless, and I wanted to comment about it and say something about it. It was just horrific what happened. And in looking at all these satellite images online, I came upon I came upon the oil breaking up in the water, and it was that pattern. It was exactly that pattern. And then when the light shone upon it, it looked rainbow-like, and I thought, oh, that's it. You know, something so horrendous could be so beautiful at the same time and enticing. And so that's the way to pull people into the idea of the topic and the subject. And also, if you look at it, it's very, very dense, total dense. It looks like it's just like all, you know, black on one angle, and then when you stand in front, it's really thin. So the idea of the tar paper changes and interacts. But it ended up because for a while I was in a wheelchair and I could not walk for a long time. And I had to work from a dining room table. And we had some tar paper from roofing, and anyway, it was being brought upstairs. And I said, what are you going to do with it? And it was all around the same time. And I said, don't throw it away. It has petroleum and oil in it, and I can do something with it. You know, it's kind of about that idea. And so I just started playing with it and manipulating it and cutting up. I wanted it to be even more dense than what I had made, but what I discovered is I could make sections, small little pieces, and I could put them together and they could grow, and I could grow them on the dining room table, almost like knitting, you know, fabric, and I could just keep pushing it off the table and start with more and pushing. I could make them as big as I wanted to make them. And so that's a long way to answer a
No, but
question.
it's an incredible answer. I think it's really important because when I first encountered your work, I didn't know what that material was.
Yeah.
And then the more I learned about it,
That's great, because that's what I wanted. It's really to feel like I could transform, you know, like an everyday material that we use for roofing. And then the color is like just handmade Japanese paper that I bought. It has a lot of fiber in it. So it's a really beautiful paper and it holds together really well. So,
well, before we, I'm going to ask one final question, but I also want to say that I did an article about this for Art Spiel. And Eddie, where are you, Eddie? Can you raise your hand? So if you can, there's more, and there's links in that article as well to everybody's individual website if you want to explore their work. As a journalism professor, I often tell my students the very last question you should do in any interview is what's next. So, Judy, I mean, do you know what's next? Where are we going to go with that question?
I don't know exactly, but neon has begun. Do you know how? It's not difficult. It is difficult. It's expensive. It breaks. I break it, but it has a certain light that the new LEDs and all that really don't do the same thing, and it slows me down because I have to bend the tubes. I have to learn about. I mean, fire has always been like my thing that I used to say every artist is a pyromaniac and thinks they're adopted. But I've been doing a lot of things with ceramics and slumping glass. Glass has been on the periphery for a long time, and it's really difficult because it's so technical, and I am not. So slowly, I'm actually becoming a student, which I never was, of kind of glass stuff. So
I got to see your exhibit at Wave Hill, which was
it was a nice show.
That was a great show.
Wave Hill is a nice place.
But before I go on to the other three, I want to say that because of Judy's career, there has been documentaries made, and if you want to see her at work with the fire, you should Google on YouTube, and you can watch her at work. I just got lost in that, as well as the 6-hour interview that I read from the Smithsonian.
Yeah.
Sylvia, what is next? Where do you go from this?
I don't know. I will keep using the wool. I don't know what will happen. I will probably keep doing the castings with paper and with aqua resin. And they're changing in that when I started the casting, I think it was from a few years ago, and it was about having the security of the result was somewhat controlled because of the mold. The mold sort of, is going to be a certain way. And what excites me about this is that I'm messing it up. And I think that that's because I'm getting more at peace with myself. So I think I'm going to be working with more materials and looking at the relationships between different materials. And sometimes it will be with the wool, and sometimes it'll be a separate body of work.
And Susan?
Yeah. With the pom-pom work, which I really love, and I've worked in that for so long, I've had this desire for years to be able to integrate sound into it. And I really want to, I met a woman engineer, and we kind of talked about the idea of working together. I have to see if I can, we could get a grant to do it. It's going to take a bit of work to figure it out, because I like the idea of also the pom-poms kind of, I don't know that I want the electrical components to be seen, but I just know that I want you to be able to touch them, and they're different sounds, like from life, a dog barking, a bee buzzing, someone coughing, sneezing, and that you could play it.
Wow.
That's really where I want to take it. That's my goal. And then I want to go back to some materials. I still want to play with how can I make the chart paper more completely dimensional. I've tried it. And so as it stands like that, looking through it, even if I make it like bulbous, it seems to go flat. You don't see the bulbousness of it. So I have to figure that out and play with that a little bit more. And then, these rounds that I started, that's so flat, they're so flat. So that is the idea of how to bring in dimension and to feel like, you're kind of really pushing space, in a flat way. So, that's still tar paper on that I've cut away too. So I think, and I want to go back to string a little bit. So, and flagging tapes, I still want to, I'm just going to keep playing with all
I was going to say, none of you have
materials.
stopped playing.
Yeah.
I mean, play is the
Yeah.
operative word here. And what about yourself?
I have two projects that I want to do. In the film, The Artist, at the very end of it, I'm in a kitchen, and it's imaginary, but I end up deconstructing the kitchen and turning it into a painting. So what I want to do is, I'm calling it a 7-part visual opera. And I'm going to start with the kitchen, but I'm actually going to do the set for the kitchen. And I'm going to bring in a stove and a refrigerator. And within that, there is going to be this piece about and I will do that for a number of rooms, the living room, the dining room, the bedroom, interesting places where a lot can go on. And then the other part is in terms of the photography, which I love light and space. And for me, that it also relates to the painter in me. So I am going to be on a search for more abstract space and light in those photographs. That's it.
These are fantastic plans. I'm going to follow all of you onto your next journey. And I want to thank everybody for coming. And I really appreciate, I don't work for Art Cake, and really appreciate the fact that they allowed for this event and the show,
And their space is like
amazing.
It's amazing.
It's amazing.
It's got intimate spaces. It's got, I don't know, it just holds everything, every kind of work so well.
Yeah.
It does.
And they've been great. They've been great.
And thank you, Laurie.
Yes, thank you so much.
Well,
Wonderful question.